Hello, thank you for participating in the SAIL Waiver Vendor Training. This is intended for current DSP vendors for the SAIL Waiver, and it's for year 2023. To begin, we would like to extend our thanks to you. The SAIL Waiver would like to take a moment to thank our vendors for the decision each of you has made to enter this important profession and the extraordinary commitment you make to our participants. We are thankful for our partnerships and applaud the work that you in the field perform every day. Thanks and thanks and thanks. Most of you know this, it's just a brush-up course. There are new things that are in bold print, and I will repeat twice, but otherwise this is just a brush-up course for you all. What is a Medicaid waiver? Medicaid waiver programs help provide services to people who would otherwise be in an institution or nursing home to receive long-term care in the community. Prior to 1991, the federal Medicaid program paid for services only if a person lived in an institution. Waiver programs are an extension of state plan Medicaid that offers services within the community. The sole purpose is to provide services to people who would otherwise live in an institution or nursing home. The SAIL Waiver. The SAIL Waiver program administers services to Alabama residents who meet the following criteria: 18 years of age or older with disability onset prior to age 63, meets nursing facility level of care criteria, and meets Medicaid financial eligibility. Our target population. The SAIL Waiver services are provided to, but not limited to, people with the following diagnoses: quadriplegia, traumatic brain injury, ALS, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular atrophy, severe cerebral palsy, stroke, other substantial neurological impairments, severely debilitating diseases, or rare genetic diseases. SAIL Waiver services must be provided in accordance with a properly completed individualized plan of care that is participant-centered. Services may include any or all of the following: case management, personal care, respite care, evaluation for assistive technology, environmental accessibility adaptations, medical supplies, minor assistive technology, personal emergency response systems, including the initial installation and the monthly fee, assistive technology repairs, and personal assistant services. Services provided by a direct service provider, a DSP vendor. Personal care services, personal assistant services, respite care services. SAIL Waiver vendor scope of service: personal care, respite care, and personal assistant services. Note, under no circumstances should any type of skilled medical services be performed by the personal care worker or personal assistant worker. Personal care or personal assistant services are not an entitlement, but rather based on the needs of the individual concerned. A closer look at personal care services. The objective of personal care services is to maintain and promote the health status of clients through home support, health monitoring, and support and assistance with activities of daily living. Services provided by the personal care worker. Personal care services include assistance with eating, bathing, dressing, personal hygiene, and other activities of daily living. Personal care services are provided in the SAIL Waiver participant's place of residence. They also may include the preparation of meals for the participant, but not the cost of the meals themselves. And basic monitoring of the client. Skin condition while bathing or dressing, excessive sweating, abnormal breathing, lethargy, and recognition of emergencies. Medication monitoring. Inform the consumer that it is time to take prescribed medication in accordance with written directions on the box or bottle. The personal care worker may not administer medication, but may hand medication container to consumer for self-administration. A closer look at respite care services. The objective of respite care services is to maintain and promote the health status of clients through home support, health monitoring, and support and assistance with activities of daily living. When the caregiver is not available due to illness or other catastrophic event, this must be approved by the SAIL director in writing. A closer look. Personal assistant services. Personal assistant services may include assistance with any personal care function, but may also include assisting with eating, personal hygiene, transportation, and other activities of daily living in the support of employment. And these services are designed to assist an individual to increase their independence and ability to perform everyday activities on the job. These services are provided only to individuals in competitive employment. Both personal care and personal assistant services. These supports are for the participant only and not other members of the household. Additional personal care worker responsibilities may include unskilled services relating to the participant's physical requirements, such as assistance with bladder or bowel requirements, for example, changing a diaper or emptying a leg bag. Assistance with ambulating and transfers, reminding the participant to take medications. Again, no skilled nursing services should be performed by the personal care worker or personal assistant worker. DSP business requirements. A DSP must maintain a current business license. The DSP must acquire and maintain, during the life of the contract, liability insurance to protect all paid and volunteer staff, including board members, from liability incurred while acting on behalf of the agency. DSP will provide workers' compensation insurance for personal care workers, personal assistant workers, providing services to SAIL waiver participants. Documentation for such coverage will be required at audit. These workers cannot be contract workers. DSP will provide worker compensation insurance for nurses employed by DSP as well, unless they are contract nurses. Documentation of coverage or contract status will be required at audit. DSP administrative requirements. DSP has to have a designated person that has full legal authority for the operation. DSP has an individual to serve as the staffing administrator Who will be responsible to employ qualified personnel and ensure adequate staff education, in-service training, and perform employee evaluations? This does not have to be a full-time position. However, the designated administrator must have the authority and responsibility for the direction of DSP. If the staffing administrator address or phone number changes, or if an extended absence of the agency administrator occurs, DSP will notify SAIL within 3 working days. A new organizational chart should be forwarded within 30 days following a staffing administration change. DSP will not delegate to any other agency or organization its administrative and/or supervisory functions. DSP budget. An annual operating budget should include all anticipated revenue and expense items, which would, under generally accepted accounting principles, be considered as such. DSP must maintain an annual operating budget. DSP must be able to demonstrate that they have sufficient operating capital to maintain operations for 6 months based on its budget and operating costs. DSP office hours. DSP will maintain an office that is open during normal business hours and staffed with qualified personnel. DSP will establish regular hours of business operation. DSP will identify regularly scheduled holidays. DSP is not required to furnish services on those identified holidays. DSP will not be closed for more than 4 consecutive days at a time unless a holiday falls in conjunction with a weekend. DSP organizational structure and conduct of services. DSP will have an organizational chart showing administrative control and lines of authority for the delegation of responsibility to the hands-on participant care level staff. This information shall be readily accessible to all staff. This will include names of personnel as well as titles. Any revisions or modifications should be distributed to all staff of DSP and to SAIL. DSP policies and procedures. DSP must have written bylaws or equivalents. In other words, policies and procedures. DSP must have developed and maintained a policies and procedures manual, which will include, but is not limited to, policies related to HIPAA, confidentiality, universal precautions, hiring, and an emergency plan that includes provision of client services. DSP is expected to comply with its own policies and procedures guidelines, even those outside the scope of its agreement with SAIL. Hiring and maintaining staff. RN qualifications. Currently licensed by the Alabama State Board of Nursing to practice nursing, capable of evaluating the personal care workers in terms of their ability to carry out assigned duties and their ability to relate to the participant. Ability to assume responsibility for in-service training for personal care workers by individual instruction, group meetings, or workshops. Must pass a statewide background check. Current verification of an initial TB skin test must be in the employee's personnel file and must thereafter comply with current Alabama Medicaid agency rules regarding TB testing. LPN qualifications. Currently licensed by the Alabama State Board of Nursing. Must pass a statewide and local background check. Capable of evaluating the personal care workers in terms of their ability to carry out assigned duties and ability to relate to clients. Ability to assume responsibility for in-service training for the personal care workers by individual instruction, group meetings, or workshops. Current verification of an initial TB skin test must be in the employee's personnel file and must thereafter comply with current Alabama Medicaid agency rules regarding TB tests. Personal care respite care worker qualifications. Has 3 references that will be verified thoroughly and documented as such. Is able to read and write. Has completed 8th grade education. Is able to follow plan of care with minimal supervision. Is able to perform the essential functions of the job. Is employed by DSP prior to the provision of services. It's free from communicable diseases as demonstrated with a negative TB test. Current verification of an initial TB skin test must be in the employee's personnel file and must thereafter comply with current Alabama Medicaid agency rules regarding TB testing. Has no physical or mental impairment to prevent lifting, transferring, or providing any other assistance to the client. Demonstrates emotional maturity and proper attitude for participants, their families, and the general public. Has the ability to establish and to maintain effective working relationships with the participant and family. Verification of a clear criminal background check, sex offender register, and nurse aid register. Is able to pass the local and state verifications. Personal assistant qualifications. Meets personal care worker qualifications and has references which are thoroughly verified and documented. Has no physical or mental impairment to prevent lifting, transferring, or providing any other assistance to the client. Is able to assist recipient appropriately with daily living activities as related to personal care. Is at least 21 years of age. Has a valid driver's license and proof of current vehicle insurance. Note that this is a requirement because it is the only service where driving may be required. Has at least a 10th grade education, preferably is a high school graduate or has a GED. Is free from communicable diseases as demonstrated with a negative TB test. Current verification of an initial TB skin test must be in the employee's personnel file and must thereafter comply with current Alabama Medicaid agency rules regarding TB testing. Can family members be personal care workers or personal assistant workers? Services provided by friends or family members must be approved in writing by the SAIL director prior to employment and provision of services. The original written approval must be kept in the employee's personnel file. Services provided by friends and family members may only be approved if the relative or friend meets the same qualifications as any other worker, and there are strict controls to assure that payment is made to the relative or friend as providers only in return for personal care services, and there is adequate justification for the relative or friend as a provider of care, and proof is provided to show lack of other qualified providers in the area. Under no circumstances will payment be made for services furnished to an adult disabled child by the parent, to a parent by their child, to a recipient's spouse, or to a minor by a parent or step-parent. Pre-hire responsibilities of DSP. Statewide background checks will be required for all service employees and for any employee who operates within the state of Alabama and has access to client records. Branch office employees, including non-visiting employees employed by DSP and who have access to client records, are required to undergo background checks. Out-of-state corporate office employees will not be required to have a background check. That is from the Medicaid manual. Pre-hire checklist. This is a good list to put in the front of your personnel files, in front of each file. On this one, this is a sample. You have the name of the employee, date of hire, the date the background checks were all completed, the date of the TB skin test or chest x-ray, the date the initial training was completed, the skills test was completed, a driver's license or non-driver's ID number, when the company badge was made and issued, the date of the first client contact, and the date of the first 6-month review. You can have other things on there too. Verifications, criminal background check, both local and state, other states as needed. Use common sense. If someone lives and works in Phoenix City and also works across the line in Georgia, you will need a Georgia background check. Check the National Sex Offender Registry. Make sure every state is on that sex offender list. If it's not, you haven't done your job. You have to keep running it until you get all of the states. Check the Nurse Aid Registry. Check the Alabama Board of Nursing for RNs and LPNs and check department. Background checks. The state background check shall include the following personal identifiers: name, including aliases and AKAs, social security number, date of birth, driver's license number and or state issued non-driver's identification. Background check must include the National Sex Offender Public Registry. Background check documentation must not be altered in any manner, including print and run dates. Documentation that cannot be verified will be considered invalid. The run date must be printed on the document by the source. It cannot be hand written on that and considered valid. Permanently disqualifying convictions or pending charges. Any crime of violence, a misdemeanor, or a felony. Any felony convictions, as well as any pending felony arrests. The following are criminal convictions that would prevent an individual from being employed for the time period as specified below. Reckless endangerment in the last 5 years. Stalking in the second degree in the past 5 years. Criminal trespass in the first degree in the past 5 years, violating a protective order in the past 3 years, unlawful contact in the first degree in the past 3 years, criminal mischief in the first degree in the past 7 years, unlawful contact in the second degree in the past year. The operating agency, which is ADRS or SAIL, will have the final discretion on the application of the above guidance and may implement a more restrictive policy in relation to the performance of statewide background checks for employment. Debarments. DSP is required to check debarment monthly for staff who work in clients' homes. Any provider participating or applying to participate in the Medicaid program must search Medicaid's exclusion list, the list of excluded individuals and entities, and the System for Award Management website on a monthly basis to determine if any existing employee or contractor has been excluded from participation in the Medicaid program. Also, any provider participating or applying to participate in the Medicaid program must search all 3 lists prior to hiring staff to ensure that no potential employees, contractors have been excluded from participating in the Medicaid program. For further details on screening of current and potential employees and contractors, see Chapter 7, Section 7.3.1 of the Provider Manual, https://exclusions.oig.hhs.gov/. The Office of Inspector General maintains a national list of all individuals who are excluded from receiving reimbursement from Medicare and Medicaid. For a complete comprehensive list of all individuals, go to http://oig.hhs.gov/fraud/exclusions.asp. Staff training requirements. DSP is responsible for providing annual in-service training. The minimum training requirements, 12 hours on core topics, must be successfully completed prior to working with the client. DSP must provide a minimum of 12 hours of relevant in-service training per calendar year. DSP must include an annual training module specific to tuberculosis and submit training materials to the operating agency. This one's new. DSP must include an annual training module specific to abuse and neglect and DHR reporting requirements. For a few years, you've submitted the training materials regarding tuberculosis. What is new is that the DSP must include an annual training module specific to abuse and neglect and DHR reporting requirements. DSP must document and retain all records of workers' initial and additional training, in addition to workers' annual performance assessments. Personnel files must be kept on each worker, documenting that each worker has met the above requirements. Proof of training must be recorded in the worker's personnel file. Annual in-service training plans must be pre-approved by the SAIL program specialist. initial training topics to be completed prior to client contact. Physical, emotional, and developmental needs of individuals with severe disability, as well as ways to work with the population served, including the need for respect of clients, their privacy, and their property. Activities of daily living, including bathing, sponge and tub, personal grooming, personal hygiene, meal planning and preparation, and proper transfer techniques. Assistance with ambulation and proper lifting techniques. Record keeping. For example, a daily log signed by the client or family member, responsible person, and personal care worker to document specific personal care services provided to client. Home support. For example, light cleaning, light laundry, home safety. Medication, basic infection control, tuberculosis control. Again, the new one, abuse and neglect and DHR reporting requirements. Communication skills, monitoring of the client, for example, observe for signs of change of condition, prompt client to take medications as directed, basic recognition of medical problems and medical emergency, and basic first aid for emergencies. Maintaining worker files. DSP will maintain a file of each employee who provides or reviews services. The file will include date of hire, I-9 documentation, basic education, copy of diplomas for supervisory staff, professional license verification, work history, 3 verified personal and work references, background check verification, sex offender verification, debarment verification pre-hire. Again, those background checks have to have a run date printed on them from the source of the check. You may not handwrite dates on those and have them considered to be valid. A job description, orientation training prior to service delivery, ongoing in-service training documentation, supervisory visits, a minimum of every 6 months, performance evaluations annually, complaints and resolutions, TB test results pre-service, and other required TB documentation per Medicaid. Debarment verification monthly, confidentiality, and other contractual agreements. Before we get bogged down, let's make sure we are all using the same terminology. This is a service provider contract. You've all seen this. This is a payment authorization, and you have all seen this as well. In the EVV system, the provider contract is the authorization. How you get SAIL waiver clients. Clients choose their DSP from the participant choice of vendors list. Starting services for a new client, service provider contract and service authorization. The SAIL case manager will contact the DSP to see if they have a worker available in a specific area for specific hours. Once it is established that a worker is available, the SAIL case manager will contract for services by designating the amount, frequency, and duration of service for clients on a service provider contract in accordance with their plan of care. DSP will initiate services within 3 working days of receiving the service provider contract from the case manager. When the DSP receives a new SAIL client, the referring case manager meets with DSP staff with the client for the initial visit. Services should not start before the service provider contract is in place. A service authorization encumbers the funds allocated for the services outlined in the service provider contract. It follows the initial contract, then will be reauthorized on a quarterly basis thereafter. That would be in October, January, April, and July. DSP must adhere to those duties that are specified on the service provider contract. If DSP identifies personal care duties not presently authorized that would be beneficial to the client, it must be discussed with and approved by the case manager. If additional services are identified by DSP, the case manager will review client's plan of care within 3 working days of receipt of DSP's request to change the plan of care. DSP must have an effective backup service provision plan in place to ensure that client receives services as authorized. We do understand that that is a big request we are making in today's employment climate. Authorization. The number of units and service provided to each client is dependent upon the individual client's needs as set forth on the client's plan of care, which is established by the SAIL case manager. The amount of time authorized in the service contract does not include provider commute time to and from client's residence. Service contracts and authorizations will be uploaded into the EVV system by the case manager. Units of service. Personal care. The unit of service will be per 15-minute increments of direct services provided in the client's residence. Personal assistant care. The unit of service will be per 15-minute increments of direct services provided as support for competitive employment. Respite care. The unit of service will be per 15-minute increments of direct services provided in the client's residence. 4 units are 1 hour. The number of hours authorized per visit must be stipulated on the plan of care and the service provider contract. Maximum service allowances. Personal care. Services cannot exceed 25 hours a week or 5 hours a day. Examples of authorizations: 10 hours a week, 2 hours 5 days a week, or 3 hours 2 days a week, and 4 hours 1 day, not to exceed 4 hours per day. 25 hours per week, 5 hours 5 days a week, or 4 hours 6 days a week, and 1 hour 1 day a week, not to exceed 4 hours per day. Personal assistance. Client must work 40 hours per month. Services are based on needs and offset by personal care hours. Respite care. Not to exceed 600 hours per year and must be approved by the SAIL director in writing. Ongoing supervision. Personal care and personal assistant services must be provided under the supervision of the RN or LPN who is employed by the DSP. This is new. Either the DSP, RN, or LPN must make initial visit to the client's residence prior to the start of personal care or personal assistant services for the purpose of reviewing the service to be provided, who to call if problems arise, and information regarding advance directives. Again, new, the case manager must make the initial visit with the RN or LPN prior to the provision of services. What is new here is that an LPN can make that visit, that initial visit. Either the DSP or RN or LPN may make 60-day supervisory visits. The supervisory visits must be submitted to the SAIL case manager within 10 calendar days after the visit. If the client is inaccessible during the time of visit, the review must be completed within 5 working days. Not new, but very important. Nursing supervision. Provide and document supervision, training, and evaluation of personal care and personal assistant workers. Provide on-site supervision of the personal care worker, personal assistant worker, and respite care worker at a minimum of every 60 days for each client at the client's residence. Medicaid will not reimburse for services provided if the 60-day visit does not occur or is late. Not new, but very important. Supervisory visit must be documented in client record and sent to case manager. Observe each worker with at least one client every 6 months. This visit can be in conjunction with a 60-day visit. Assist workers as necessary as they provide individual services as outlined in the service provider contract and plan of care. Any supervision or assistance given must be documented in the client's record. Missed visits. A missed visit is when the participant is waiting for scheduled services and the services are not delivered, or when a worker arrives at a home for a scheduled shift and no one answers the door or lets them in. Missed visit procedure. DSP must have an effective backup service provision plan in place to ensure that the participant receives the services as authorized. And again, we realize that that is a very big request right now. Whenever DSP determines that services cannot be provided as authorized to an at-risk client, the case manager must be called immediately. All missed visits must be reported in writing on a weekly missed visit report form to the SAIL case manager on Monday of the following week. If the DSP does not send a substitute, the DSP will contact the participant and inform them of the unavailability of a worker. Whenever 2 consecutive attempted visits occur, the case manager must be notified. An attempted visit is when the worker arrives as scheduled at the residence and is unable to provide services because the client is not at home or refuses services. DSP cannot bill for attempted visit. Missed visit procedure recap. When a worker is not available for a scheduled work shift or an at-risk participant, Call the SAIL case manager and the client home immediately. When a worker is not available for a scheduled shift for a participant who is not at risk, call the client home immediately. When there are 2 consecutive missed visits because the participant is not available, the worker arrives and no one answers the door, call the SAIL case manager immediately. Every Monday morning, send a missed visit report to each SAIL case manager for each participant who had missed visits for any reason whatsoever the previous week. Required notifications. DSP will notify the case manager within 3 working days of the following client changes. Client's condition has changed. Services no longer meet client's needs. Client dies or moves out of service area. Client no longer wishes to participate in a program of personal care services, or knowledge of client's Medicaid ineligibility or potential ineligibility. The case manager will notify DSP immediately if a client becomes medically or financially ineligible for waiver services and issue a service provider contract terminating services. Case manager must verify Medicaid eligibility on a monthly basis. Note that this is particularly critical during the public health emergency unwinding, as some participants may no longer be eligible for services, while others may have neglected to complete required paperwork. We are all working to ensure that no one loses benefits due to undone paperwork. Rights, responsibilities, and complaints. DSP will inform participants of their right to complain about the quality of personal care, personal assistance services, respite care services, and will provide participants with information about how to register a complaint. Complaints that are made against personal care workers, personal assistant workers, or respite care workers will be assessed for appropriateness, investigated by DSP, and documented in both client's file and worker's file. All complaints and follow-ups by RN, LP, and supervisor shall be documented, and appropriate action must be taken. DSP must maintain a complaint log, including documentation of all complaints, outcomes, and follow-ups. All complaints against a personal care worker, personal assistant worker, or respite care worker will be referred to the worker's supervisor, who will take appropriate action. The supervisor will document the action taken in both the client's and employee's file. The supervisor will contact the case manager by letter, email, or telephone about any complaint and the corrective action taken. This contact will be documented in the client file. DSP must maintain a complaint log identifying the date and time of the complaint was made and to whom, the client, the worker, the nature of the complaint, and resolution to show that they have complied with the requirements of this section. Mandatory reporting. The Alabama Adult Protective Services Act of 1976 addresses abuse, neglect, and exploitation of adults who are incapable of protecting themselves and have no one willing or able to protect them. If you are a practitioner of the healing arts or caregiver, you are required by law to report any form of suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation of an adult who is physically or mentally incapable of adequately caring for his or herself. Long-term care ombudsmen are also mandated reporters. Mandated reporters must report immediately after finding reasonable cause to believe that an adult in need of protection has been subjected to any form of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Reports may be made orally, by telephone, or in person. It should be followed by a written report. Mandatory reporting. SAIL is a mandatory reporter to both DHR and Medicaid. We report abuse, physical, sexual, and verbal, exploitation, mistreatment, neglect, fall, fire, injury, whether moderate or major, and death, whether natural or unnatural. We report that to Medicaid. To DHR, we report abuse, physical, sexual, verbal, exploitation, mistreatment, and neglect. The DHR reporting number is 800-458-7214. 800-458-7214. Client files. DSP will maintain a case file on each waiver participant receiving services and establish a client profile in support of units of services delivered based on the service provider contract and authorized services. The client file will contain, but is not limited to, initial visit and all supervisory visits, all missed visit reports, all service contracts, including the initial contract, new contract when any service changes, including the number and or distribution of approved hours for services to be provided, the discharge contract, documentation of responsible person. If client is not physically able to sign, then the personal care worker must document why the log was not signed by the client or a responsible person. All medical and other participant information. All information will be kept confidential and shared only with people authorized by the DSP to use such information for the participant's rehabilitation and developmental purposes. The DSP will retain a client file for at least 5 years after services are terminated. To reiterate, all client files must contain initial visit and all supervisory visits, all missed visit reports, all service contracts, including the initial contract, new contract when any service changes, including the number and or distribution of approved hours or services to be provided, the discharge contract. This is not an exhaustive list. Billing and reimbursement. I think you will get your fill of that in the EVV training, which is a separate training you're required to participate in. SAIL billing sheet. We need to know what you think you have entered into the EVV system. A simple chart, the days of the month running down the left, how many units for each day, any comments, a total. It includes a client name, the DSP name, the month and year of the billing, the invoice number, and a signature indicating that this is an accurate instrument. Termination of the MOA. SAIL may terminate an MOA at any time before the date of expiration whenever it determines that DSP has failed to comply with the terms of its MOA. And the DSP may terminate its MOA by providing a 30-day written notice to SAIL. Or you will have a renewal of the MOA, same paperwork every 3 years, but you have it all under control now. If you have any questions, give me a call or email me. I'm Lillian Butler, and I'm at lillian.butler@rehab.alabama.gov or 334-293-7349. Thank you for participating in this training. You know you have other trainings as listed in the email that you received from us, and also a test to take to get back to me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.